Did you know that the erotic art of the Spanish painter and illustrator Louis Royot actually sparked my passion for Gothic-inspired angel paintings? Who would have thought that a bunch of scantily clad girls would be the perfect gateway into the world of beautiful art? I mean, it's not like there's any other art out there that could have possibly caught my eye like Van Gogh or Monet, right? It might be because Royot's paintings were the very first real art I was exposed to, and they had a bigger influence on my taste and shaped my style more than I would give it credit. It's like with dog puppies. In the first 3 months of their life, they need to be exposed to all different kinds of senses, so that they are not going to be afraid of them once they are adults. I believe humans share probably some similarities with dogs in this regard. Royot has a talent for portraying beautiful and seductive angel girls, which is genuinely unique, so back then I was completely mesmerized by his work. I even bought a small art book in our small town comic store. And whenever I paint angels now, it makes me so nostalgic and transports me back to a different time, when I was young and full of life, like a dog puppy. Now this angel painting I finished a while ago, and it's named after the fallen angel Kesabel. The title was suggested to me by one of my followers, and it turned out that it was actually the perfect title for this painting, as you will soon find out. Now, to be honest with you, I don't know much about angels and biblical mythology, so I had to do a bit of research about them, and this angel in particular. The name Kesabel only appears in a mysterious and ancient Jewish text called the Book of Enoch, which is not considered canonical by most branches of Jewish or Christian religion. In this ancient text, Kesabel is described as one of the fallen angels, called Watchers, who descended to Earth and taught humanity various forbidden knowledge and skills, which led to widespread wickedness and the corruption of the earth. Which is extremely fitting for this painting, as my angel carries a sword and has quite the mean look on her face. Okay, I admit the original lore tells us that these fallen angels were actually male and took human wives, but who needs accuracy when, as artists, we can just make stuff up as we go along, am I right? Now, as a mythology and history enthusiast, I have always been captivated by the world of angels, and painting them is just so much fun. Because yes, you can paint very tacky and kitsch-like angels, like the ones by Louis Royot, for example, but it doesn't have to be like that. They could look super cool, modern, and also very dark and creepy. I still have to paint many more angels to explore the various possibilities to depict them. So whether it's an angel from Christian mythology or any other religion, if it's a pretty girl with wings, count me in. And if you are equally excited about painting angels like I am, I invite you to paint alongside me during the extended painting process of this angel, which you can find on my Patreon page, together with the sketch, reference, and material list. And of course access to over 200 painting videos and lessons at once. You could also take on one of my beginner tutorials instead, whose motifs are often inspired by ancient history and art, and will not only improve your artistic skills, but will also give you this wonderful transcendent feeling that we all get when we visit a museum and witness a 1000-year-old artifact for the first time. Or you can get a limited edition fine art print of this painting, which you can find in my online shop. Links to both my Patreon and shop are in the video description. Now for this particular piece, I created a reference image that had lots of contrast between light and shadows and plenty of gold tones. Picking the right colors and ensuring they remained clean was easier said than done, especially in the early layers. It's very easy to end up with muddy colors, which is why I had to be extremely careful with each stroke. To protect the highlights of the wings, for example, I used masking fluid, which allowed me to paint over them without worrying about losing any intricate details. I have so many metallic paints and I often forget which ones I used for what painting. But recently I stuck with the Finetec metallic paints and the Etcher pearlescent paints. I actually also tried Dollar Store metallic paints. You can see them in my last mermaid video, by the way. But they have the problem that you can't layer any other watercolor on top because it blurs out and gets uneven and fuzzy. The better quality metallic paints lets you layer more watercolor on top, and this is the reason why I used them for this painting. I will add many more layers on the wings, and I can't have the paint to be fuzzy there. But the biggest challenge was actually painting the face, because when I utilize my so-called glass jar technique, I don't have many room for errors, and the colors need to be absolutely crisp and clean. In this technique, I lay down individual layers of colors, almost like a mosaic or paper cut pieces. By the way, I made many videos about this already, and you can find countless lessons on Patreon about my portrait painting technique. Each layer here requires clean, fast and intentional brush strokes, and unfortunately the slightest mistake can mess up the entire face. But with lots of thinking before I place each brush stroke, and of course patience, I managed to create the vibrant outcome that I hoped for. Yay! With this composition, I really like the play between the blues, the golds and the reds, which you will see later when I paint the roses. Over the last years, I really learned more about colors and how important it is to make a good color composition before you even start your painting. I also came to appreciate muted color palettes too, which I think look so elegant. Especially gold and grey has such a big appeal to me. It reminds me of the religious medieval art I saw in many museums that depicts saints and various holy people. I find medieval art so strangely attractive, with the wonky and sometimes super creepy figures and monsters. I always think about that centuries before Christianity arose, the Romans and Greeks and even the ancient Egyptians were so much better and masterful in making art. And then, when Christianity spread and sciences were suppressed, everything decayed, and you can see this decay especially well in medieval art, which is a bit uncanny when you think about it. Because it means that our civilization too could fall, and yes, it got dark quickly. Now, I find medieval art as beautiful and fascinating as other art forms, because it's the crookedness and the strangeness that I really came to cherish and enjoy. Speaking of vastly different art styles, whenever I create art, I love combining elements and influences that you might not see together, like my Egyptian goddess on the moon, for example. But here I incorporated less extreme elements. I opted for a Norse-inspired wall mural, which gives this angel painting a unique twist, in my opinion. Last year, when I visited the Danish National Museum in Copenhagen, I saw these incredible artifacts from the Viking Age, and they ignited a passion in me for Nordic mythology. When I saw these gigantic runestones, I felt I was thrown back in time, and it felt as if Vikings and Norse warriors would be just around the corner. The amazing thing about being an artist is that you can turn your fascination into something entirely new and unique that truly represents you and your experience in the world. For me, that is currently mixing and matching all the aesthetic and historical influences that inspire me to create intriguing and otherworldly paintings. But to be honest with you, I actually need to do some readings about Norse mythology first before I can create something meaningful. So far, I only know some basics like the gods Odin, Thor and Freya. But the Norse unique aesthetics has captured my fascination anyways. Their intricate, ornate braided patterns and symbols have a distinct ruggedness and mystery, and every one of us has probably a picture in mind of Norse sagas filled with gods, warriors and valkyries. This distinctive crookedness of runic inscriptures actually fits well to the aesthetics of early Christian art, because it complements their unique flat and illustrative style. This art form, with its distinct use of muted colors with golds and browns, strange sense of proportion and narrative opens up a different kind of aesthetic appreciation. It's a window into a time when Europe lost most of its scientific knowledge, and the Church needed to use art not only to inspire and guide people, but also to instill fear and respect for the authorities. Since the majority of medieval population couldn't read, religious art served as a visual scripture that taught values and stories that were relevant at that time. For me, the dark aspects of the medieval time are clearly visible in Christian art and cathedrals for that matter, and I like blending the dark with the beautiful, because only the tragedies of life can make us appreciate the beauty. By the way, the game Elden Ring perfectly captures the blend of medieval beauty and horror, in my opinion. Now, while we are being philosophical, have you ever wondered why angels are always depicted with wings, or why they are called angels in the first place? Well, apparently, the word angel comes from the ancient Greek word angelos, which means messenger. In ancient texts, it describes spiritual beings whose main job was to convey messages from the divine realm to the human realm, which kind of makes sense when you think of birds and other airborne creatures that are the only animals that can reach the sky, so to speak. The concept of angels as divine messengers is a very common thread in many religions. For example, the ancient Sumerians and Assyrians, which I am, by the way, equally obsessed with because of their outlandish art, were also fascinated with angels, which you will certainly understand when you see an ancient Sumerian artwork for the first time. The Assyrians and Sumerian culture thrived at roughly the same time as the ancient Egyptians, so the concept of angels is much older than the Greek word for it. A bit later, we find angels described in the Hebrew Bible with beings such as the cherubim and the six-winged seraphim. When Christianity came around, they picked up on this imagery. Initially, Christians depicted their angels more human-like, to keep them distinct from pagan gods. But eventually they gave in, and around the 4th century, as Christianity became more established within the Roman Empire, the depiction of angels with wings became more common. During the rule of the Emperor Constantine, the first one who converted to Christianity, it became widely accepted as the state religion. This led to the development of a new style of Christian art that was more decorative and symbolic. And in the early beginnings, Christianity had actually some beautiful values, in my opinion, which it still has, of course. For example, their ethical values were against the brutal gladiator fights. Almost unimaginable if you think about the horrors of the Spanish Inquisition, which happened around 1,000 years later. But let's talk about more uplifting things than the Spanish Inquisition, shall we? For example, this interesting aspect of yet another big religion, Islam. Did you know that Muslims have also angels? But you have probably never seen a picture of one, right? Now, this is because in Islam there is a concept called aniconism, a Greek term for without images. Muslims believe that making images of divine entities can be considered as idol worship, or it may reduce the importance of the divine. People may then start to worship the images themselves instead of the divine beings they are supposed to represent. As a result, Islamic art often focuses on calligraphy, geometric patterns, and floral motifs. I was so surprised when I learned this, because now I finally understand why there are so many incredibly beautiful mosaics and patterns in Islamic art. When I visited Sevilla in Spain and Marrakesh in Morocco, I was absolutely blown away by the diversity of colorful mosaics, and if you imagine that artists were only allowed to create patterns, all their creativity and energy went into designing those for centuries, of course they became incredibly masterful. This is the reason why Islamic art is so distinctive from European art. But if they would be allowed to depict divine beings, you would be surprised, because who wouldn't want to see an angel with 600 wings? It's not like it would be overwhelming or anything, right? Islamic artists are really missing out on this opportunity to show some truly mind-blowing divine beings. I mean, who needs patterns when you can have an excessive number of wings of an angel, right? It's definitely what I always imagined when thinking of heavenly creatures. Now, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I also wanted to invite you to join my newsletter to get special deals on my prints and to be included in fun events in the future as well. So, with that being said, see you soon. Bye bye!